In the previous video, we learnt that there's at least 3 components that make up a basic CheckPoint NGX installation. And it's those 3 things that we'll be installing in this video, as they all form the basis for the rest of this course. So let's get started. We're going to install the SecurePlatform component, which of course is going to be our gateway, or the firewall if you prefer to call it that. So when you drop the first CD in the drive and you start up your server, it's going to fire up with this welcome screen that you see here. So we're going to hit enter to start up the installation, and it's going to quickly check to see if the hardware we have inside this machine is supported to run the CheckPoint SecurePlatform NGX R65. Now, in my case, in the middle of this screen, we're told that my hardware has been scanned and it is suitable for installing SecurePlatform. And if you want to see what devices that this setup discovered, we can tab over to the device list and we can take a look, or we could add a driver if we happen to have a newer driver for our hardware that isn't included in this installation. But since we're here and we're okay, we're going to click OK to continue, and then we're going to have the option of installing SecurePlatform or SecurePlatform Pro. So I'm going to choose the Pro version here, and then we'll click OK. Then we'll need to choose our keyboard type, which for me will be the default of US. And then we can choose to enable the web-based configuration if we like, which will use the default SSL port of 443. So we're going to leave this box up here checked, and we'll tab down to OK. Alright, and now we're ready to begin. So we'll choose OK again, and the setup is then going to format our hard disk and begin the installation. Now this will take between 5 and 10 minutes to complete, so I'm going to pause the video here and we'll return in just a moment. Okay, well the installation's now complete, so we'll need to remove the CD from our drive and choose OK and restart our server. So we'll do that now and we'll be back in a moment. Alright, well our server's now been restarted and we're presented with the default logon prompt that you see here. Now in order to log on, we're going to need to enter in the default username, which is simply admin, and the default password, which is also admin. And we'll hit enter there, and you can see that we are firstly prompted to change our default password, which isn't a bad idea at all. So we'll do that now, and we'll need to confirm it. We'll do that again. And finally, we've now got the option of choosing a new username if we like, but if you want to leave it at admin, I'm just going to hit enter, and we'll leave it the way it is. Now, this drops us right into the default prompt where we can begin configuring our gateway. So the first thing we'll need to do is to configure this server's host name, its IP address settings, and other things like our DNS servers and so forth. So we'll need to enter in sysconfig, and we'll hit enter there, and that'll start up the initial configuration wizard. So we're going to type the letter N for next. And up the top here you can see we have 5 options. We have host name at number 1, number 2 is domain name servers at 3, network connections at 4, and routing at 5. So let's start with the first one, the host name, by entering in a 1, and we'll hit enter. Now we can show our existing host name or change it, so let's change it by entering in a 1 again. And since this is our gateway, or our firewall if you like, I'm going to give it a name of CP for checkpoint and gate for gateway. And let's just say that this is going to be our Los Angeles firewall. So we're going to add in a -LA, and then we'll hit enter. Now we can also enter in the IP address of the interface that we'd like to be associated with this host name, but I'm not going to worry about that for now. I'm just going to hit enter, and you can see our host name set, so we'll hit enter one more time. And now if we choose number 2, and we'll hit enter there, right at the top, you can see our host name has changed to cpgate-LA. So we'll type in an E for exit, and now we'll choose option number 2, and that'll be to configure our domain name. We'll choose option number 1 again to set the domain name, and I'm going to set our domain name to winstructorlab.com, and we'll hit enter there. Alright, it's been set, so we'll hit enter again, and then we'll type an E to exit. Now we'll choose option 3, and that's to configure our domain name servers, our DNS servers. We'll hit enter there. Now, for our DNS server, we'll need to add one, so we'll choose a 1 there. We'll need to enter in an IP address of our domain name server, so that's going to be 10.0.0.1, and we'll hit enter there. Now, we can, of course, add in more if we like, but for now I'm just going to leave it at the single DNS server, and we'll type in an E to exit there. And now we're going to move on to step 4, which is to configure our network interfaces. Now, in my server here, I have 3 interfaces, so I'm just going to type in a 5 here first to show our connection configuration. And we should see 3 interfaces here, which we do. We see Ethernet 0, 1, and 2. Now, since they haven't been configured yet, if I type in any of those 1, 2, or 3 here, you can see it's set to not configured. So what we're going to do now is we're going to choose number 2 to configure a connection. Our connection will be Ethernet 0. And we'll need to set up the IP address for this interface. We'll type in a 1 there, we'll hit enter. I'm going to give this interface an IP address of 10.0.0.70, and we'll hit enter there. We'll give it a subnet mask of 255.0.0.0, and we'll hit enter. And for the broadcast address, we're going to leave it at the default. I'll just hit enter, and we can see it's configured, so we'll hit enter one more time. And now we'll type in E to exit that interface. Now we'll need to configure our second interface, so we'll type a 2 to configure a connection again. This connection is going to be our Ethernet 1, so that's a number 2 there. We'll hit enter again. Firstly, we'll need to set the IP address for this interface, so we're going to type a 1 there and hit enter. And we'll need to give this interface an IP address of 10.32.0.35 and a network mask of 255.224.0.0. And I'm going to leave the broadcast address at the default. Alright, we're configured there. Now we'll type E to exit. And for our final interface, we'll type a 2 to begin configuring it. That'll be interface number 3 there. And we'll set the IP address for this interface. And for this interface, I'm going to give it an IP address of 192.168.22.101. And we'll give it a network mask of 255.255.0.0. I'm going to leave the broadcast address at the default. We'll hit enter there. Okay, it's configured. We'll hit enter again. And an E to exit. Alright, well now that we've configured our gateway's interfaces and some basic properties, we're going to switch over to another machine that I've got on my network here, where we'll be able to use the web interface to log in to this gateway and continue its configuration. Now this machine that I'm on right now is a Windows 2003 R2 server, and this machine is going to become our Smart Center server shortly, but that's not really why I'm here on this machine specifically. I could be logged into any machine really, as long as it's able to see our gateway, at least from a networking perspective, and as long as it has a web browser, which we're going to need to log into the gateway. So we'll open up Internet Explorer, and we'll navigate to our gateway's address, which is 10.0.0.70, but we'll need to log into our gateway using HTTPS. So we'll hit enter there, and we'll accept our certificate here. We'll get rid of this information bar. Now the first thing we're going to have to do here is to accept the terms in this license agreement, which you can read at your own leisure. So we'll click the I accept button. And of course you can see we do have our pop-up blocker here enabled, so I'm going to always allow pop-ups from this site. And now you can see we're able to log in. So the first thing we'll need to do here is to enter in our username and password. Now the default username at this point is of course admin, unless you changed it earlier, and the password is whatever you configured to be earlier. So we'll log in with admin and then the password we created, and we'll click login. And this will bring us straight in to the first time configuration wizard, so we'll click next to begin. Now the first thing you're going to notice here is that all of our interfaces are already configured and they're all up. And in all honesty, it doesn't matter whether you configure only one of your interfaces from the command prompt and do the rest here, or do like I did and configure them all from the command prompt. Since at the end of the day, it doesn't really make any difference. Either way, you're going to have to configure them all, so use whichever method you prefer. So if you want to do them from here, obviously you'll still need to have at least configured one of them so you can connect to it from your web browser, but then you can click the hyperlink here for each of these interfaces that you want to configure and then modify the details here and then simply click apply. But I'm going to cancel out of this since our interfaces are already configured and we'll just click next. Now here we can check out the contents of our routing table and we can modify it if we see any errors in here, or add in some new routes if we like by clicking on the new button and then selecting either a route or a default route. Now we don't need to do that here as this should already be correct in most cases, so we're going to click next. Now we can add or change our DNS servers if they aren't correct, or if we have more that we want to add in. That's fine for now. We'll leave it as it is. We'll click next. Now we can then verify the host name and domain name as well. And finally we can configure the management interface. Now this interface is important since it's the interface that our Smart Center server will communicate with the gateway on. So for me, this will be my first connection, and then I'll click next. And finally here we can configure the time and the date, and we can either accept to leave it at a manual configuration or use an NTP server to synchronize clocks. Now I'm going to leave this at manual for now, but do be aware that both your gateways and your Smart Center server must have their time synchronized, or you're going to have problems with those two machines talking with each other. So I'm going to click next. I'm going to leave the default configuration here for web SSH clients at any. We'll click next again. Now on this screen we can choose from either CheckPoint Power or the UTM product. I'm going to leave the default here at CheckPoint Power. We'll click next. And then we'll need to select which components we want to install on this gateway. So I'm going to select VPN1 Power, and this will automatically select the performance pack. And I'm not going to select anything else right now as this is all we need, but throughout these videos we're going to come back and we'll talk about some of the other things anyway. So for now we'll click next. Now we're going to skip this step here to define our gateway, as it's neither a member of a cluster at this stage and it's not using a dynamic IP either. So for now both of these things are irrelevant. We'll just click next. And finally here we'll need to enter in an activation key, which is really just a password if you like, for Secure Internal Communications, or SIC. And this is also so our gateway and our Smart Center server can communicate over a secure channel. So I'm going to enter in a password here, and we'll type it in a second time just to confirm it, and we'll click next, and then we'll click finish. And this will start off the configuration process for our gateway. So we'll say yes, and the configuration is going to be applied to our gateway. Now this will take quite a while, and we will need to reboot this machine once it's configured. That's the gateway I'm referring to, not this machine that I'm on right now. Remember that we're configuring the gateway remotely right now. In fact, it's actually going to reboot itself anyway. It's not something you have to do manually. But this will take a while, so I'm going to pause the video here and we'll return in a moment once the configuration of our gateway is complete. Okay, well as the message suggests here, our configuration is complete and our first gateway is up and it's ready to roll, and it's now waiting for us to send it some instructions as to what we want it to block or allow through it. So in this video we've seen how to install the CheckPoint SecurePlatform components and perform the initial configuration. So now that our gateway is installed, we're able to move on to the next video in this series where we'll install our Smart Center server so we can begin the process of configuring and managing our firewall. So we hope you've enjoyed this video and would like to thank you for watching.